This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
I am thou, thou art I. From the sea of thy soul I cometh. I am your persona. Greetings everyone, this is Under the Sun and I'm your host Ricky. Welcome to another edition of Fictional Reviews. This time I'm doing Persona 5 Strikers, or as it was called in Japan, Persona 5 Scramble, The Phantom Strikers. Persona 5 Strikers is a game that serves as a sequel to the original Persona 5 or its re-release Persona 5 Royal. I just want to quickly point out how funny it is that the Persona fandom followed the supposed pattern of adding a color to the title of the game, like Persona 5 Crimson or Persona 5 Scarlet, when in fact there was no pattern in the first place, considering Persona 3's re-release was called Persona 3 Fest, assuming it's short for festival, and Persona 4's re-release was called Persona 4 Golden. So now, we have Persona 5 Royal. Quick disclaimer, I still don't know what Royal means to Persona 5. Unlike Ruby, the Snyder Cut, or even the Mortal Kombat 2021 movie, Persona 5 Strikers is a video game. As such, there is more to review in a video game apart from the usual suspect like story, direction, camera, lighting, voice acting, and or acting. Video games also involve gameplay, viability of play, and sometimes puzzle and replayability. I am what you call a noob. I always play my games on easy or beginner mode. I don't feel like I have the right to talk about gameplay and viability of play in that context. So from here on out, I would only be reviewing the story, the characters, and the occasional comments and effects. You know, the usual suspects when it comes to reviewing a fictional story. So, here's the synopsis. Cherry-kun, or Discount Harry Potter, returns to Tokyo for some fun with his ex-Phantom Thief friends when they find themselves accused of a crime they didn't do. So it's the same premise as Persona 5, where Cherry-kun, or Discount Harry Potter, was sent to Tokyo on probation for a crime that he did not do. Anyways, here's how the review is going to work. I'm going to state the pros first, then the cons. And as you know, the cons are the flaws in the fictional story. Well, there's no really flaw in this story because of the one pro of this game, and it's that Ryuji drops an F-bomb.
She's bugged, huh? She's worthless? You got all that from 5 friggin' questions? We're Sophie's friends, and we know she's awesome! She's friggin' amazing! 1,000,000 times better than you! So shut the up, idiot!
That's it. Review's over. Game's 10 out of 10. Perfect score. All jokes aside, here are the pros. Character exploration. Each of the thieves share a connection or parallels with a different character, original 2 strikers. And with Alice Hirogi, Yusuke with Ango Natsume, Haru with Mariko Hyodo, Makoto and Futaba with Akane Hasegawa, and Morgana with Sophia. Even Akechi has a parallel with Konoe. Although, I don't really like that fact. We'll get to that later. This character exploration serves as a good point for this story for Persona 5 Strikers because it explores more about the characters we've come to know and love from the Persona 5 games. This is especially true for Haru, who we meet on Persona 5 very late in the game. And in Royal, we have Kasumi and Akechi to explore. It really just serves to explore more of their characters and how they react to certain situations, like how Haru is actually a speed demon. Anyway, next point would be bonding as friends. The original Persona 5 really didn't seem like they were good friends. They were like people who banded together because they share the same goal, just like how the C's were in Persona 3. But Royal has actually fixed that with a lot of activities in between. Then, Persona 5 Strikers adds on to that with their trip. and it does help that everyone has a good chemistry with each other. Another point would be its story. Not to say that the original Persona 5 or even Royal wasn't cohesive. Strikers, however, has a very concise story. It has a definitive beginning, middle, and end. But that's probably the benefit of not having a dating simulation element present in Strikers. The ending was close enough that most of the questions we've had at the beginning of this game were answered, but it's also open enough for a future sequel for this spin-off or for another spin-off with a different game mechanic. Pitfalls. Strikers also managed to avoid the many pitfalls the original Persona 5 fell into, and Persona 5 Royal tried to cover up, but ultimately failed. One of which was the inconsistent character writing for Ryuji, who we've seen as someone who detests perverts, suddenly becoming a huge pervert after defeating Kamoshida. There are still remnants of that in Strikers, but I'd argue that it's mellowed out to fanboying and not staring at Ant's cleavage direct. Now, let's go to the cons, or its flaws. Then speaking of pitfalls, Persona 5 Strikers also falls to another kind of pitfall. The pitfall where characters are considered an accidental pervert. This route happens whenever a male character is accused of being a pervert without actually doing anything perverted, i.e. getting caught at a rotating hot spring when it's the girl's turn to bake. This happened both in Persona 3 and Persona 4 Golden. In Persona 4 Golden's case, it's the girls who forgot that it was switching times and blamed the boys for barging in. Well, the hot spring strip with Murray was actually warranted, with Yosuke and Teddy actually peeping on the girls. Persona 3's case was the actual machination of Junpei and Ryuji. In Strikers, this happened at the second Hot Springs event. The boys had innocently stayed longer than prescribed. They tried to exit without getting caught, but failed. Hence a bit obsession with Makoto's saying her all-out attack background quote in Persona 5. Fists of Justice. This route stopped being funny years ago. It was funny in Persona 3 because Junpei and Ryuji got their comeuppance for such a deplorable act. Persona 4 Golden's first hot spring trip was not funny. The second trip with Marie was actually warranted. Not funny, but still warranted. Strikers, however, it wasn't warranted at all. Another con for this game was Ryuji. I'm not saying Ryuji's existence in the game was bad. I will explain. While Ryuji did not fall into the stereotypical best friend pervert role that's prevalent in the Persona series, at least in Strikers, and the things about his characters that were detested in Persona 5 or Royal were absent in Strikers, that positive comes with a few flaws. One flaw was Ryuji being rather unimportant to the story of Strikers. Yes, story-wise, Ryuji could have pulled a Kasumi and be somewhere else, especially considering Royal's ending, and the story of Strikers wouldn't change at all. At least, the general story beats won't. Earlier, I mentioned that each character has a connection or parallel to a character in Strikers. Konoe's backstory could also work as a parallel to Ryuji with an abusive father. However, the way they executed Konoe's character, he became an XP of Shido from the original Persona 5. Someone with the right intentions, quote-unquote, with wielding such powers. An adult who would use anyone and everyone around him. Hence, my description of him as an XP of Shido. Everyone from the Phantom Thieves present could have some connection to a character in Strikers, but with how Konoe's character was presented, Ryuji's importance to the story was sorely diminished. Another flaw, at least in my opinion, was the Doppelganger Fight. We only got to fight Joker's clone and not the rest of the thieves. I can see how it could be hype to fight one-on-one with the character, but I feel like we should have fought with the thieves either as one-on-one, like say Haru versus Haru, Ryuji versus Ryuji and whatnot, or fight the whole group against your group. That way, it would reward grinding your other teammates in the long run and punish the players for focusing only on a few characters. Now, this one's not a con per se, but it's a nitpick. My nitpicks. The lack of costumes or even a special boss with a velvet room attendant was kinda disappointing. Apart from the fighting games and the kill games, wardrobe was a good way to spice things during playthroughs. Only seeing the thieves in their thief outfits kinda felt boring as time passes, especially during times where you're just walking around the jail and not encountering any shadow. I also lament at the fact that we don't get to fight Lavenza here. Every game so far has a fightable Velvet Room attendant, and Strikers is the first one to do without one. Overall, Persona 5 Strikers is a solid game. Its story is concise with definite beginning, middle, and end, with characters getting explored further, especially the ones who were unfortunate enough not to have many scenes in the original game. I'd give this game an 8.5 out of 10, a solid game. Now that is all for now. Until next time, ciao ciao!